Hello, this is John Davis with Action Coach. I'm here with Terence Chatmon of Victorious Family, and he's going to share a little bit about his business with us. And I think it's going to be a real interesting discussion. So Terence, I'll turn it over to you. Just if you could just introduce yourself and your company and what you do, that'd be great.
Yeah, my name is Terence Chatmon. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO and for Victorious Family. We are a nonprofit organization that helps families to flourish around the nation. We're in about 37 countries worldwide. About 177 countries pull our content in some way, but we're strategically positioned around 37 countries. We've been in place for about 12 and a half years, informally for about 3 years. And in that process, we trained about 100,000 parents within that 12 and a half year process. And we teach them on how to design a written spiritual plan for their home.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. How'd you get into that?
Well, I come from corporate America. So my background, I started out after graduation from University of Illinois. I started with a company called, that you would know, Johnson & Johnson, right? And so I was part of that McNeil Consumer Products Company, which you would know as Tylenol Products. And then I was recruited by Citibank down in Florida, and I ran Citibank Florida for a while. And then what brought me to Atlanta, Georgia, was a small company by the name of the Coca-Cola Company. And so
you've only worked for small companies, I see.
Exactly.
It's a shame you couldn't find some big companies.
And so I grew up in, I understand it, but I also for 10 years, I was an entrepreneur and I own my own business, Atlanta Bread Company, a franchise. And so I know what it means to sign the back of the check as well as to sign the front of the check. And so I lived through that process. But how I really got involved is in this calling assignment is really as I was evaluating my life as, as a businessman, you're so busy building this enterprise, whether you're in corporate America or your own business, you're focused on building that enterprise. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure I didn't fall short on is how do I raise my kids?
Right.
And that becomes a priority. I think after the pandemic, we've all discovered how important it is to be available, to be present.
Absolutely.
As a dad. And so that was my focus. It was always my focus. But I wanted to help other fathers and other parents to raise their kids so that they can be loved well. And that's what we do. We teach parents in how to be intentional in that process.
That's a great mission there. But you're right, I can relate to that. So I coach my kids in softball. These are softballs up here. And it was part of my decision when I made the change is I wanted to find a career that I could do from anywhere so I could be part of their activities whenever they do. My youngest is a freshman in college, and I'm like, I want a career where I can go watch those games and do what I do from anywhere to be part of my kids' lives. So yes, I certainly understand your calling here. Excuse me. So when I think about running your business, am I correct? It's a nonprofit?
It is.
So you kind of have, I'm going to say, two target audiences is my take. And many businesses have multiple target audiences because they do different products and services. But it seems to me you have folks like myself that are parents, trying to run the household. That would be one audience that needs to learn about your product. But then I assume you have some on the fundraising donation side. How would you characterize your different target audiences? How do you define them?
Yeah, so our primary audience, obviously, our end user, if you think of it that way, would be parents, right? Whoever has authority for the child in the home. That includes grandparents, single parents, traditional parents, etc. Whoever has authority for raising that child up in the home is our target. So that's one target. The second target would be church pastors, leaders, influencers in the community. We do a lot of work in partnership with churches. On the other side, though, as you mentioned in terms of donor partners, we consider those investor partners. They want to see healthy, strong families. And so we give them opportunities to come alongside and walk with us and to invest in families domestically and abroad. And so, how do we help raise up a child? And so we do three things. We do workshops for parents, coaching for parents coming out of those workshops, and produce content. And so we need support in producing content workshops and bringing forth coaches and training them well so they can help parents. When I think about parents, I think about situations like a young man I met just a few years ago. His name was Armando. And Armando is a young man about 14 years old. He lived in a family of about 5. And when I think about Armando's life, for the first time he had ever heard of the name of Christ Jesus was on an airplane with a stranger flying to Colorado Springs. And what has happened is we've abdicated the responsibility to raise our kids in the Lord to the church, to a Christian school or a Christian camp. And what we do is, and the reason we do that is because 83% of parents feel totally inadequate to train and instruct their kids in the Lord. So if you think of a business, think of anything that we might look at. If you have a gap where 83% of parents feel totally inadequate to do a job that they've been called to do with no training, and they've abdicated that to the church, they feel so inadequate. There's a huge gap and a huge void. And I'll just leave it at this. We believe no nation can flourish beyond its spiritual condition. And even as a businessman, you would understand this, and the business folks that we're speaking to, you would never think to start a business without a business plan. Mm-hmm. A church would never think to start a church without a ministry plan. But every day, we start to raise a family without any type of intentionality or plan. In fact, less than 1% of Christians have any type of written spiritual plan to lead, guide, and direct them. What we kind of do is just kind of wing it wherever the wind blows.
Do it like we were done.
Right. And so we got to change that. Exactly. So we want to change that 1%. How do we move that 1% to 30% to 60% to 90%, where everyone becomes intentional, just like a business person?
Yeah, so it sounds like, going back to the idea of the target audiences and the 3 that you mentioned on the family side, if it's less than 1%, it's probably just about anybody.
That's right. That's right.
Just about any demographic. And I'll tell you, I personally, I don't know if I want to go into it here. I can relate to a lot of what you're sharing based upon my upbringing, my wife's upbringing, and where we are with my kids. One's in high school, one's in college. So yeah. I can relate to your message there. So, and then you talked about pastors and your global pastors and churches. So is there any type there that's more, that would be better served with your service? Is there one that you're targeting? No. I feel bad saying targeting in this discussion.
No, that's good. I totally understand. You're a business guy, I get it, right?
Yeah.
So, but no, we've attracted small, medium, large size churches. Our key is that Christ is in the center of that, right? So we're a Christian organization, and so we attract Christians to have that conversation. Right. But regardless of what your faith is, you want to be intentional in raising your kids with some foundation principle standards. For us, we feel that foundational standard rests in our Christian walk. But our pastors are small, medium, large size churches, interdenominational, non-denominational. The centerpiece is Christ-centered.
Right. Okay. Very good. So the last few years have been a little weird in our society. That's the only way I can put it. It's created a lot of change. Now, I think people really look back every year, there's some major change, but obviously the pandemic created some stuff. And this is really more of a business question, but it'd be interesting to see how it applies to you. Is first you had the pandemic. So then you had this labor, right? This worker shortage, which I'm sure in some format has affected you. Supply chain, staffing, recession, they keep dangling recession, inflation. How has all of that impacted your business in the last year?
No, it's a great question. I mean, although we're a nonprofit, only difference in nonprofit and for-profit, we don't pay taxes. So, everything else
the bottom line, the bottom has to be 0, right?
That's it, right? We deal with a lot of the same issues, right? Staffing issues. It's always about people at the end of the day, and then the logistics, all of that. So for us, just imagine that where we used to go and speak, maybe 100, 200 times a year, and now all of a sudden that's all shut down. Imagine that Most of our content was delivered in person in a classroom setting, and now all of a sudden that's all shut down. Imagine that certain supplies that you need that you might ship from different parts of the world, they're not available now. And so how do you recreate that? So we have dealt with very much the similar issues. But I think as most business people do, they identify opportunities, right? And they try to fill those gaps. And so for us, we needed to fill those gaps. And so that just basically accelerated our online offerings. And so instead of doing some things in classroom, we just took that to distant learning, online offerings, just like anyone else. But there's some things we can't do online, but for the most part, we could. And what it did for us over the last couple of years is opened up regions of the world that we never could have walked into, especially the Middle East, things like that, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and so forth. We basically opened up markets, if you will, through distant learning and distant education that we could not have done so in a quote unquote pre-pandemic environment.
Were those already on your radar? Were they already in your growth plan?
Not at all. Not at all. We had 33 strategic cities that we participate in domestically and abroad. And those typically aren't locations that are welcoming to us.
Right.
But there's a huge remnant, and it has opened the door quite a bit. In fact, our number 1, 2, and 3 countries are in the Middle East and outside of that. So places like Indonesia, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, etc., strong countries in a different faith, have now connected with us via the internet, via virtual, and those doors are open. And I think from a business standpoint, one of the things we do that connects business leaders is our Master Family Champion, which is a trainer coaching platform. And that's under our victoriousfamilyacademy.org. So we train and certify coaches that go out and facilitate our workshops and then coach parents along the way. And today we've been very effective. Once we've added the coaching elements, and you know this all too well from Action Coach, once you add the coaching element to your teaching, it sticks, right? It's a sticky point.
Absolutely.
We used to train on workshops and how to prepare a plan, and maybe 36% of parents might implement that, and the rest of them, it goes on the shelf. It was a nice weekend. But once we added the coaching element, we now see 97% of parents implement that plan within the next 90 days after workshop. So tremendous shift when you add the coaching element.
Yeah, so we talk about coaching in our vernacular. I think it sounds very similar to yours. We use the analogy, it's a two-part epoxy. One is the education, and the second is the implementation. If you go to a seminar, if you read a book, if you watch a movie, whatever you do, you get the education. And you leave, and there's a very low percentage of people who go do what they say they're going to do.
That's right.
The follow-up, the implementation, the accountability, the question and answer, the support mechanism that goes with coaching, either in a business or what you do, is going to, like you said, it's going to stick. Change.
But we say that the biggest gap is between what we know and what we do, right? And in the middle of that is this huge gap. A lot of times we know what to do. We simply just, for whatever reason, we're challenged to do that, right? And even in corporate America, we know what to do a lot of times. It's the execution of that and doing that with high levels of efficiency that gets us to success, right? And so here we're working through that with parents to be intentional, because we know that once your kids graduate from high school, about 75% of them will walk away from the church altogether. And they won't return until they start to have kids. And so we want to change that number dramatically, and we've been able to do that.
And one thing you talked on too is a lot of times when people don't do something, right? You said they know what they do, they don't do it. You said they know what to do. I think if you talk to somebody who doesn't execute something, it's either they didn't necessarily see value in it in the first place, or they don't truly understand. The task seems too big, and that's where the coach comes in and breaks it down into, I can't put together a plan. Okay, well, can you do this step? Okay, let's do this first. Let's do this second. So that's I love the parallel here. Obviously, I think you and I could talk for hours offline. So it sounds like your changes were similar. Are there any changes you wish you had done differently in the last few years?
In terms of the business or in terms of
Yeah,
personal?
the
Yeah,
business.
no, I look at this and, you know, we move out and we move out at the level of trust, right?
Mhm.
And so we're very much in a relationship uh, business, if you will. And so our key is a lot of times um, there are some things we wish maybe we'd have taken online a lot quicker, but I think there's some things that we simply can't take online. There's some experiences that still need to take place face to face. And I think the workplace is even challenged with that today, right?
Mhm.
Do we bring folks back into the office? Do we continue, hybrid situation? Do we keep it 100% remote and so forth? We're dealing with those issues. But when we deal with the family, what we learned from the pandemic, especially, is that for the first time in a long time, parents were reconnecting with their spouse and with their children. They had been on the road so much, they might have even been available, been present, but not present.
Right.
So I think the pandemic opened up people's eyes to what the real pandemic is. And the real time pandemic, in addition to what we experienced in COVID-19, the greater pandemic, and people face things like anxiety, depression. It went up, 2, 3-fold because they were dealing with issues or not dealing with issues that they now were confronted with. And what I wish we would have had much earlier are some resources around dealing with depression and anxiety in the home. Because at one point pre-pandemic, it was around maybe 30-some% of families that would face some form of depression in the home. That number today is about 67%. And so now they're dealing with issues that they've never had to deal with before. We are not made for isolation. I
Right.
don't think this new wave of isolated business, meaning remote learning and remote business, is going to be effective. I think it's going to be around because people are trying to figure out how to adjust to it and find workers and so forth. But I don't think the efficiencies and the effectiveness of business will maintain itself with a totally remote marketplace. I don't think it's effective at all. I think collaboration is needed, and I think in-person innovation must take place. Now, I may be proven wrong. I'm willing to risk on that. But
Right.
I've been running businesses for a long time. It sounds good. It seems very convenient. But when you're dealing with team and collaboration and innovation, you need to be walking with one another and united and connect. We're not
Yeah,
made
you
for
still need that
isolation.
engagement. Yeah,
You
I
really do.
yeah. I mean, there's efficiencies in remote. You
Yeah,
just have
absolutely.
but yeah, and you can do more remote once you built that personal relationship,
That's right.
for sure. So you talked about the depression and things of that nature. Are your coaches prepared for that type of challenge, or do you have partners that you need to bring in? Do you have a network of partners in that regard?
Yeah, so we do both, right? I don't think we're totally prepared. I think we're dealing with some challenges we've never dealt before. In fact, people in the profession haven't dealt with in a long time. So the way we produce content, some we produce in-house, and some we partner with existing content purveyors, right? Because we're not the expert in everything. So we want to find experts within those content areas that's key to the family. Partner with that. We don't need to recreate the wheel. We're good at what we do, but there's others that's very good at what they do. And so what we are in need for, we are in need of coaches. In fact, I can see, for example, action coaches joining this movement, adding another tool to your toolkit, and providing training in a world of opportunity that you're not currently in today, that could expand your reach quite aggressively. And so we need
Okay.
coaches to reach parents. We're about to add, for example, 10,000 churches within the next 18 months. We're going to need 2 coaches for each church. So we're going to need 20,000 coaches within the next 18 months. And I'd rather take a trained leader like yourself who's used to coaching and the fundamentals of coaching and certified in coaching and pair them up in a situation. Of course, in our case, they have to be a Christian base, but we can help get them certified online, add another tool to your toolkit, and there's real opportunity to move forward and add some real
Yeah,
economics to your business.
we could certainly talk about that. I've got someone else I think I want to introduce you to
Yeah.
in a different field. But certainly we do some things on a nonprofit side, and then some of which is, for us, it's still a paid service. We do, no charge service, and we do other different things for nonprofits. But there is a component to church is still a business, particularly the larger churches, right? They still have to deal with a budget. They still have team issues. They still have talent issues. They still have systems and processes and all those things. So certainly we can talk about that here offline. I'd be very interested in that. So what's been your biggest learning since you started this?
Our biggest learning is that regardless of who you are, small, medium, large family, small, medium, large church, regardless of where you are in terms of one child, 15 children, whatever, the one area that we know is critical is to love well. Parents, that your children needs affirmation. Your children needs to be accepted. They need to be loved. They need to be cared for. I always say before they kind of want to know how much you care before they know how much you know. And they want to be loved well. And so, people always ask me, hey, what's the one secret ingredient? I don't have a checklist. I don't have do these 15 things and you become a great parent. That doesn't exist, by the way. But the one thing I do know that is necessary in every home, regardless of who you are, for your family to flourish, is for you to love that child well. Because what they're feeding off of is their acceptance.
Right.
And they crave that love. Now, here's the thing. They especially crave that love from dad.
Right.
Right. Things change dramatically when they see the dad loving the wife and then the dad loving the child. There's never a time in a child's life that they don't crave the love of the father. And so one of the things we want to emphasize is dads especially. You have a significant role to play. No longer abdicate that to the wife or to the church or to the camp or to the school. You play a very significant role in a child's life, and they crave your love. So that's the key learning for us.
Okay, that's profound. So thank you for sharing that. Are there any opportunities that you want people to know about and how to engage with your organization?
Yeah, I mean, one is our Master Family Champion coaching certification program. You can find information online. Secondly, just for parents to kind of get started in just kind of a starter kit. We have a home kit that's available for parents. It's very reasonable. $40 for a home kit, kind of get you started. And we've been able to, put that out there, and parents have really enjoyed that. And then just an easy entry is my book, Do Your Children Believe? You can find it on Amazon and so forth. But Do Your Children Believe is kind of tells the story of my walk and how I got started in my family, and just the impact it has had on about 100,000 parents across the world. So we hope that you engage there and prioritize your family. Many of us will say the number one important thing in my life is the family. Right. But less than 1% of us have a written spiritual plan to lead, guide, and direct it. Not saying we're not prioritizing that. I'm just saying there's a gap, and we want to help you fill that.
That's when you're filling it, right? That's your
exactly
target right there. That's your mission.
That's
per se, right?
We want to help you, and we want to walk with you.
I did see that kit online when I was doing my research, and
yes.
I think that's very helpful, and a lot of good information. And it's nice to know there's an organization like yours out there serving that, because I think you're right. I think there is a gap based upon my personal experiences.
Yeah.
So, and I like your approach as well. I think there's a lot of people who have an understanding and a mission in the heart in it, but maybe don't have the professional background that you have to make it scalable. So that's very cool. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate the time here today. Thank you, Terence.
Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.